Rad with another episode of SOFREP Radio. And today I have my special guest, Zachary Armstrong and Mike Peyton. Zach currently works with the Navy. And if you see him right now on the video, he's wearing his Navy fatigues or his, what would you call those exactly that you're wearing right there? There's fatigues and then there's your khakis.
Yeah.
Khakis. Very cool. Very cool. And then you have like dress whites, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We call those ice cream parlor. Yeah.
Have you ever, can I ask you something? Have you ever stained them on accident, like in a place? You're like, oh no, I just spilled on my dress whites.
Honestly, somebody who's going to be talking about abuse issues, alcohol and whites do not mix. I come back and they're just tattered and just black everywhere. It's I had to replace them a few times.
Yeah, that's funny. Okay, yeah, I've seen that. You know, we've all seen Top Gun, and in the, you know, the singing, they're all wearing their dress whites and everything, and you're like, what happens if they spill that punch? You know, someone bumps into him, sir. Sorry, you didn't mean to spill. Okay, and so Zach, thanks for breaking down uniforms real quick for the Navy. And then Mike, you and also I want to say about Zach. Zach's our guest today. He's going to talk about substance abuse, how to try to curb that habit. He's a keynote speaker and comes across very eloquently and just straightforward. So we're going to give him a time to talk about that. And I'm just going to introduce Mike right now, who is also his friend, who we've brought on the show, who's going to be, I believe, opening something back east in Virginia with the substance abuse in mind for veterans. Mike, is that right?
Correct. So it's a program that's going to be tailored to, well, let me backtrack. It's an infrastructure that's going to be developed in the future, tailored to commandos, active and retired, as well as first responders.
Very cool, very cool. And they're just going to be able to come there and just say, hey, you know what? I was prescribed some pills, and then I've been chasing pills after the prescription, and now I need some help.
Essentially, I mean, yeah, it's coming with no judgment. We're going to have NDAs or non-disclosure agreements, you know, signed, and there's going to be a whole protocol of procedures where their identity and whatever they're dealing with is going to be concealed to the organization,
classified, if you will, to the organization, between you and the facility that you're going to be working with. It's going to be, you know, you're going to have confidence, you know, when you go there. You're going to be able to say, hey, you know, I was in the military, I blew my knee out, I was prescribed some, you know, opiates, I got out, you know, I was underneath the bridge looking for opiates in a different form, and I found it in a weird way, and now I'm struggling. And so they're going to approach you, and I'm just assuming, you know, I'm just a high level. So Zach, with that said, how do we help our veterans who are in these positions of like, hey, substance abuse, you know, like maybe they're on duty, maybe maybe he's sniffing JP8 on the flight deck too much, right? That's a substance, right?
I mean, yes, I wouldn't recommend drinking too much of that. You know, so what I talk a lot about is not necessarily how we can help, you know, somebody who's already on the street. That, you know, that's not where I'm at this point. I'm really trying to talk to people that are in and, you know, how they can deal with things. So what I usually start off talking about is, you know, depending on the source, you know, 1 in 6 or 1 in 7 people are affected by addiction issues. So whether you as the military member are going to have it directly towards yourself, or a family member, a friend, or somebody that may work for you at some point, it's important that you know these problems and see them, because you will face them with almost uncertainty at this point if you're going through the military. The type of person who joins the military, you know, is very, there's an edge to them, correct? Right? To sign on that dotted line, you don't really know what you're going to do, whether you're going to be, you know, like Mike, a SEAL, or if you're going to be like, you know, an admin person. You don't know what you're putting your life towards. So usually those type of people come with backgrounds, as well as first responders, like Mike spoke about earlier, that come from a background of a little hardship. Because you have that edge, you need that type of personality. And what's important to note about that too is, you know, trauma. I've been around addiction for a pretty good bit now. I have met one person out of a lot of people that have just an addiction issue who had no trauma. It's very unique that you have or encounter somebody with addiction issues that does not have past trauma. And so whether that comes from childhood, which is a big factor in a lot of addiction issues, is childhood trauma, abuse, something along those lines. A lot of those people are more susceptible to being, having addiction issues later on, as well as people who have family members who have had addiction issues. So that type of personalities that join the military are usually in line with those type. When I go talk to military members and I ask them to raise their hands, who's experienced that, usually around half raise their hands, right? And that's just because the type of person that joins the military is around those people that have those things, that have that edge. And then when you go, hey, and then raise your hand, if you've seen combat or have PTSD or something along those lines, which again also makes you more susceptible to addiction issues. You get a lot of hands raised. You have there's a lot less people with their hands down when you ask all those questions. And the reason I bring that to attention is that doesn't make you going to have a problem. It makes you more in line and statistically probable to have an addiction issue. And what I see with a lot of military and what I experienced myself was it started young. You start drinking at a younger age, and especially in the military, where it's part of the culture. For sure.
Culture.
And it's like a badge of courage.
Isn't there? Let me ask you something real quick.
Yeah.
Right. Isn't in the Navy, isn't there like a beer day on the Navy, like when they go over the equator or anything? Isn't it called beer day?
And the song.
Like a beer day, but if you're out at sea long enough, you get a beer day where there's 2 beers at sea. But that's a traditional thing that's throughout the Navy. And the beers you get is you're not going to get drunk off 2 beers. But unless
dude, it's really Anchors Away. Anchors Away talks about drinking to the phone.
But
no, I know, but I mean, we're talking about yeah, for sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, and so I think where I really try to hark towards our military members, and not just military members, because what I try to do in life now is I try to go after all facets of life, not just military, but military is easy to speak to because that's who I am, and that's how my problems developed along. So I know my audience because I was them, right? Is the big thing is habit. Things are habitual. We are habitual by nature, right? So, many people.
Is it?
I think we got some
pause it right now.
Some audio.
Pause it.
So when I start talking to people as well, we talk about habit because we're habitual by nature. It's not uncommon for people to start drinking on the weekends to go out and get drunk. And this is something I touch on too. Like, hey, I'm an alcoholic because I go out and drink. That's not saying you are. But what is your intentions when you go out? Are you going out to get drunk? Are you going out to not remember anything, to get wasted? Does that start bleeding into the weekdays? Do you go from hey, I just want to come back from work and have 2 or 3 beers, to, hey, I want to come back and have 5 or 6 beers to relax at night? Because I can assure you, if you're having 5 beers a night at some point in your life, that 5 beers is not going to last to remain at 5 beers. At some point, it is going to be overtaken by more because it's going to take to get to the point to where you were at for 5 beers. As your tolerance grows, you're going to at some point be a lot more than 5 beers. And that's where that habitual nature, I think, especially in the military, is, you move away from family, you move away from a lot, and your family is who you're around. And depending on how you fit in, it could be a lot. I know a lot of sailors, Marines who go, when they get done with work, they go back to the barracks and they play video games and they drink, or they go out and drink. I was no different myself. I didn't have video games or any internet when I first started out. But I was going out with the intention of drinking, right? I wanted to go out and drink, but my intentions weren't just to drink. Sure, I was having fun, but I was also going out to get drunk. You asked me what I did in Japan. Well, I just tried to go out and have fun and, meet girls and drink. That's all I did. I didn't try to, become part of the culture. I didn't learn anything. I didn't help anybody. And I feel like a lot of times in our culture that we lean towards drinking, and we have to watch the habits that we form. Those habits are very detrimental and it will increase, and it will, especially when you're already, more adverse to those problems. When you add that to it, it can increase your chances and likelihood of having severe problems.
And in the military, to piggyback on what you're saying, everybody's a creature of habit. You have people going straight to the coffee shop at 0630 on the aircraft carrier every single day. The same person's in the front of the line getting their same, mochaccino mocha super frappo that they have on some of those carriers. I know not all the carriers had Starbucks, but I'm just saying they're creatures of habit, and they go through the passageways, up the ladders, and to their stations, or out on whatever's crow's nest they're living on their entire career. So they're always doing these same mannerisms over and over. So what it could take to help somebody stop and break that mannerism is taking your watch that you usually wear on the right arm and putting it on your left arm. If you want to cut out these substances in a very cold turkey kind of way, you got to change your patterns. And so instead of always looking at your watch, it's 0630, time for me to go get that cup of Joe, or it's 2700 hours, which doesn't exist, but 2400, it's time for me to take that bottle of Jameson down. Well, no, if the watch is on your other wrist, now you're forcing yourself to look at that other wrist. You have to look at this other way of looking at your watch, and it's to remind you, I don't want that bottle of Jameson. I don't want to keep drinking repeatedly to build up that tolerance, So, there's one thing about having a glass of wine with your, did we lose Zach?
Yeah, he's gone again, man.
Let me go ahead. It's like drinking a glass of red wine with your, lasagna at dinner is a little bit of a different thing. But if you're going to cut out substances altogether, you don't even want the red wine at dinner. You just want to knock it out. And I'm just talking alcohol here, or any type of addiction. You just got to change your pattern. And in the military, you become a part of the pattern. What would you say to that? What do you think about that, Zach?
Or
Mike? Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, at a certain point, you get a physiological change or difference in your body. So, doing all these little micro changes, sure. But there has to be some form of a substitute, right? So there has to be a substitute, so that way you're not going through the extreme highs and lows. And what that is, it differs for everybody. But from my personal experience, I had to conform to taking a whole paradigm shift, and going into the nutraceutical realm, going into the holistic eating, and going in, changing everything because my physiological state was so imbalanced. And yeah, rehab it.
Hold on one second, guys. I got a technical issue popping up here. Hold on one second. I got to text Mike.
So,
go ahead.
I was talking about myself, so I had to change everything because I was so imbalanced, and it was such extremities that my physiological state was so twisted up and jacked and distorted. So I had to change my nutraceuticals. I had to change to holistic health or holistic eating. I had to change my spiritual endeavors where I'm looking for the higher power. So I'm hitting the whole wellness trifecta. And on top of it, I'm working out to get that sweat going, to get all those, whether it's chemicals or any type of negative, something that's negatively impacting my cell structure. So working out to sweat it all out, and it just takes time. But unfortunately, with nutraceuticals and holistic eating, it takes time to replace. It takes time to replace the bad or the toxicities or toxins with the good, i.e. nutraceuticals and just minerals and micro minerals and then that's where the wellness trifecta of the body, mind, spirit, getting all those in accord and intertwined is critical to recovery. Critical. I can't emphasize that enough. So at least that's my experience.
Sure. And knowing people myself personally who have dealt with substances and abuse, and the programs they've been through, the Alcoholics Anonymous, the NA Anonymous, which is like Narcotics Anonymous, trying to get their keychains that they always look at to remember where they've kicked those habits. I just think that when we think about military veterans these days, and there's a lot of people out there talking about the 22 a day, the 22 suicides that are happening out there, how much do you think the alcohol substance kicks into that thought process of what am I even here for?
So so I talk about alcohol, and I don't see a difference between alcohol when it comes to the level of addiction. I don't see a difference between alcohol. I don't see a difference between cocaine. I don't see a difference between heroin. I don't see a difference between fentanyl. Almost every person who has those addiction issues ends up in the same spot. And I say that because of my own experience, right? I did go to rehab. I did go to a detox center, and I remember sitting in that detox center, and I'm looking across to a guy. He's a gay Hispanic guy, blind from a fentanyl accident, and has a teardrop and a cross tattoo on his face. And you'd ask, 20-year-old me, how would you ever relate to somebody like that? I told you, no, I would never relate to somebody like that. But here I am sitting across from somebody, and I relate to every single thing he's saying about pain, depression, suffering from alcohol. Well, not, sorry, alcohol abuse, but for just abuse and addiction at all. And so a lot of times we use those addictions, such as alcohol abuse, fentanyl, whatever it may be, to mask what's hurting us, to mask our pain, to that PTSD, to mask our depression. The messed up thing about it is it does the exact opposite. It actually feeds into it, right? You drink that first beer because you have a little anxiety when you go to a party. Shortly after that beer starts dissipating in your system, more anxiety builds. And that's the same nature with any drug. Anxiety, depression grows and grows. I can't, for me personally, and I know Mike well enough to speak for him on that behalf too. Like, it grows to the point to where you don't want to live with it, and you don't want to live with yourself. You don't want to live with that pain. You don't want to live with that addiction. It takes over your life. I 100% was living my life and I was doing it at a very high and good nature, and still being able to be promotable, still be able to have a good work, but inside I was dying, and
Obviously,
definitely 100% part of that. It was eating me alive.
Yeah, it was, and you just had to do something, and that's when you decided. Can I ask how old you were when you decided to go into detox, and how old you are now? I'm just wondering, like, how long ago was that?
Coming in broken, unreadable. So, I mean, I'll share
Roger,
like my story on detox.
Go ahead, please.
So detox for me was, I got to a point to where I couldn't not drink. I was down in almost a fifth a night or every other night of bourbon, and it was unmanageable. My life was unmanageable. The drinking was making it worse, and then the depressing on top of it was just like compounding everything. So every single negative, tangible feeling or tangible side effect was happening to me. So that's when I self-admitted, and I went into a detox program / rehab, and I knew I had to do it because I could not quit on my own. I never had that experience before with anything. I was always to the ability of like, I can do this on my own. I can stop, or I can do X, Y, and Z on my own. I don't need help or whatever. So it was a very humbling experience.
Sure.
But the moment I reached out, and I wasn't alone. That was the key to it. I wasn't alone. And so many people were willing to help. And it was almost literally overnight that I was in a detox facility, and then which lasted about 5 days. And that was terrible, by the way, going through detox, but because the body's just like, what are you doing? It's in the shock mode, and it's in survival mode at that point. But then going into a rehab program was
all your emotions are probably just on display, right? You're just like this pile of human being.
Yep. Very, very vulnerable, very desperate and vulnerable. And so that's where I'm like, yeah. And it takes a tribe. It takes a tribe to get you through, to get one person through that certain situation. Can't do it alone. And that's where, the pride kicks in, like, especially being a former SEAL, Zach being a pilot or former pilot, like it's like we did it on our own, right? But we didn't. That's the paradox to it, is we think that we did it on our own. Yeah, we did with certain willpowers or whatever, but we didn't. It took the tribe to get us through it. And so I think if there's a key takeaway today, it'd be, you can't do it alone, man. No matter how tough you think you are, You can't do it alone. It takes our friends, family, and experts, subject matter experts, to get us through that
A battle buddy.
I call it a trench. Yeah. I call it you fall into a pit full of pigs, you're in the muck and you're by yourself. But then there's people
Darkness.
like outside of that pit they're at the top with the rope saying, "Hey, let us throw the rope down to you. Are you willing?" And all we have to do is look up and be like, "Yes, throw the rope down." Just reach out.
Yeah. Just really reach out. And, if you're listening to this right now and you want to reach out, you can go ahead. You can hit me up at Rad Rockin' on Instagram. You can drop a DM to the SOFREP Instagram account and say, "Hi, what's up?" I'll reply back to you. If you're in a bad spot, I just want to reach out to you right now listening. These are true stories. Addiction comes in all forms and shapes and sizes. And, we're all prone to it in some facet, whether your substance is food, and you're just constantly eating all the time and you don't know why you're eating all the time, or it's alcohol, which is really just going after your liver, going after your brain, just making you shouldn't even drive vehicles on alcohol. So I mean, like, what's the point of it, right? It's like, it's capitalism. That's what it is. It's like, oh, hey, this dude drinks this bourbon, this dude wants more of this bourbon. It's like, I don't know. Jameson, man, that seems to be a lot of, that whole Jameson out there. Not blaming Jameson, I'm just saying a lot of guys drink a lot of Jameson. Yeah, I tell you, dude, I see a lot of vets. It's the Jameson bottle. I see it on the table.
I mean, you watch the Super Bowl. How many ads focus on?
I must like them. No. I'm just saying, it does take a tribe, and whether you're going through, your hack qualifications to get that certification on all your pre-flight checkops, and you got some guy sitting next to you that's your CO watching every single movement, but he doesn't want you to really fail. He wants you to succeed because he needs you to fly him back onto the deck. Or whether you're going through SEAL training, your instructor may be trying to break you and kill you, you think, but they might just be trying to pull you back from the brink of death so you know what that's like. So it's like you rely on people around you. I always have this thing. It's like, you're always right when you argue with yourself. Like, I could never be wrong. How can I be wrong when I talk to myself? Right? Looking in the mirror. Look at this guy. I'm never wrong. This is the greatest idea ever. No, I can never be wrong. Yeah, no, I can be wrong. I'm human. I'm also wanting to be vulnerable, right? I want to open up and share the same type of story with you, the listener, right now, with Zach and with Mike. It's okay to be vulnerable,
Well, I always say vulnerability is strength. Allowing yourself to be vulnerable to the right people is actually strength. So, and of course, there's wolves out there and there's sharks out there that will take advantage of that. But that's why, like in this particular situation, and Zach and I had hours of conversations. That's what we got each other through rehab, because we went together. And so, like, it was us that were, like, we were the tribe. It was just us. But that's a tangent we can talk about another time. But like, the thing is the vulnerability is the strength. That's another key takeaway in my opinion.
Yeah. And so the more vulnerable I am about this, the more I get from it. The more I put myself out there, going and being a keynote speaker, talking to people about these issues, it's not easy. You'd ask me if I'd been able to talk about my problems with alcohol 5 years ago. I'd have told you no. Like, that was a secret. That was my secret. That was my dirty little secret that I kept, and I hid it from everybody. 100%. I hid it well. I hid it very well. And now that I open up and I help others, I find that I get just myself. I get so much out of putting myself out there and having other people come to me and putting themselves out there. And I find that's more living than it was being in that dark hole every day. I would never change where I've been and how I come for that, because it's made me a better person, made me more empathetic towards others, and has allowed me to live a life that I'm proud of. When I go home, when I go to sleep at night, I sleep well. One of the biggest things I heard when I've heard a speaker say is when your values aren't matching your actions, you're not living life. My actions were not matching my values when I was in that dark hole drinking. And I can assure you now, my values match my actions with the way I live my life. And that's part of that vulnerability that we were talking about.
That's awesome. So do you have like any recommendations where someone can go and read about, like what you do? Is there a book that you've written? I know you're into philanthropy and please tell me some more about how someone listening at this point in our conversation, they can say, well, where do I finally go? How do I reach out? What if it is my CO that I want to talk to, but I'm an E4? Like, what if or like not a
Right.
your commanding officer? What if you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, no, there's plenty of resources out there for any individual. I don't mind giving my contact information. My email, my contact. I can put it up on your website if that's easier for people to follow. They can contact me.
We'll have that put up for sure.
Yeah, and I can say it now. Zachary, ZACHARYJARM @gmail.com, and anybody can feel free to email me. Sometimes it's easier to put a little note on.
Well, for myself, it's michael.peyton80 @gmail.com. And so, we're pretty much on standby with this infrastructure development out here in Virginia. We're waiting on the IRS to approve the EIN and approve the status of the nonprofit, but we're a couple months out. It's not a couple years out, it's a couple months out. And then we're just acquiring seed money from them.
Right, you're on.
I'm sorry?
I said it seems like you're eve of opening. If it's a few months out, it's soon. You're like 2 quarters out or something. But yeah,
it's right around the corner. So right now we're going to launch a capital campaign once we get the approval from the IRS, and then we're off to the races. And so the mission is to help, right? It's to help people. Specifically with addictions, and Zach mentioned it earlier. And what it is trauma. Trauma is the root cause of addictions. I mean, of course, you got a predisposition genetically, 9 times out of 10, but it's also in correlation with trauma. So, if we nail this down, it's game changing, it's life changing. Life changing will be this infrastructure. Life-changing will be getting that addiction, getting rid of the addictions, putting the spotlight on the addiction, on the individual. Once we get that, we change lives.
Right.
Not only do we change individual lives, but we change families and we change communities. And that's the key, because with the community comes the nation. So if we could switch this, get off the bell curve, or on the other side of the bell curve, and reset everything. And that's the mission of the organization.
That's very cool. Is there a name that we'll be able to note when it's out? Is there something that you'd like to let out there, or are you going to hold on to that for a little bit and then launch that name?
So the name of the organization, of the foundation, is Tribe, Task, and Purpose. We're developing the website. The website will be finished mid-April, and we're going to launch it. We're going to launch everything all together in a package. So I'm actually, it's funny. I mean, I don't want to go on a tangent about my nonprofit per se, or our nonprofit rather, but I'm going through a Boston University professional fundraising course right now, which I never would have guessed how many facets are involved with nonprofit organizations. But it's incredible. And so I'm learning from a fire hose, and, Zach being a board member, like, we are going to have hours of conversation pertaining to setting up fundraising events. And, and I was always opposed to fundraising in the sense of, like, I do not want to take other people's money, because there's something about that to me that just does not sit well. Well, that's the thing. It's like, it's not for me. That's the thing. It's not for me. It's not for us. It's for the organization. It's for the individuals. So that's where I'm like, okay,
correct.
Okay, that's it.
Yeah, so that's definitely where we're striving for. We want a brick and mortar facility, starting off in Virginia, to combat, what he said, first responders and commandos. We're looking to, especially myself, starting here in San Diego too, brick and mortar, where we focus on veterans and military as well. Big homeless problem.
So you got Atlantic Fleet and Pacific Fleet.
Yeah.
Yes. I love it.
San Diego faces a big problem here. A lot of homeless, and most of those are around addiction or mental issues. There's no doubt. So, you know,
and
other
veterans.
You know, you ask for resources. You know, there's a thing called Phoenix Gyms. It's something I participate in. We set up volunteers that go around, and we have groups that meet for physical fitness. It's you know, a form of community. And I found the thing with NA, AA, you know, whether it be that, whether you go there's other avenues that focus on you know, with God, religious beliefs, as far as how they set up a 12-step program as well. It's all community. And when Mike was speaking earlier about tribe, that's important. That's the most most important factor to me when it comes to recovery, is having a community, having those of like mind. And something I think that's why AA is so successful with a lot of people. I feel like people just get like-minded people, community, sense of being. Because one thing with addiction is most people don't understand with addiction. It's so isolating. You become a singular unit in yourself, inward thoughts to where you only think about yourself and how bad your life is, and you just turn inward and you turn into a singular product, right? You're no longer part of the community. You can be married with kids and have a family 5 feet away from you, but if you have that problem, you're inside yourself. You have no community. You lose that. And so with Phoenix Gyms, that's something I participate in. One of the things I participate in is I volunteer. I teach a class every week. We're growing that here in San Diego. It's in a lot of cities. So if anybody wants to go Phoenix, just look up Phoenix Gyms. And there's a lot of classes that are offered free. It's only 48 hours of sobriety is all you need to take a class. And it's an honors-based system. So it's not like anybody's there testing you. And so you take the classes and you just grow in the community. And the same as AA, I recommend it. AA is something that fits you, then you use it. NA, anything of that nature is very important for a community. And that's what I'm really trying to grow. I think Mike is, you know, we're definitely with the facility is 100% concentrating on people with that are recovering. But I think one of the things is what I really try to focus on too is giving people options outside of just drinking, especially with the military. So giving options of going to do things like where you're not going back to the barracks and just drinking, or turning that inward thoughts earlier and trying to hit that off. So Phoenix Gyms, I really recommend that. Any other community groups, you know, we're talking about males more right now, you know, male groups. There's a lot of groups that are out there. You can talk, have groups where you can talk or meet people like-minded. In the days of the internet, it's a lot easier to find things. You know, Mike's active guy too. And I think activity is a very important factor with recovery or in avoiding those habitual natures that we focus on, especially in the military with, you know, alcohol use.
Well, Zach, one thing that you nailed, spot on.
Good.
Well, one thing that Zach nailed spot on is giving back. So we don't become that isolated unit, you know, and we actually get back to the community. We get back to our families. We give back to the nation, or whatever capacity we're giving back, but we give it back, and or pay it forward, if you want to call it that. But that's what we're trying to establish and set up with networks like that, to where they have the ability, or we have the ability, to give back.
Yeah, I think that's like, you know, I have a lot of aspirations on what I want to achieve the rest of my life when it comes to combating addiction. Making one single penny is not on my mind. I don't ever want to make one bit of money off of it. I want to be able to give back. Like I said, when my action, you know, my values and my actions match, I go to sleep pretty good at night. And going out and giving back and giving to others means a lot more to me than ever getting anything back from it individually.
100%.
That's really nice. Yeah. And I think that you have been leading that lifestyle. If you were after money, you wouldn't have joined the military.
Yeah.
If you want to be honest, okay? So I believe you. I do, and I want you to be super successful with your organization. And I just want to talk to my listener who's listening right now, who may have some money, and they may say, hey, you know, I might just reach out to Mike or Zachary and drop them a line and say, look, how can I help you really get there? you know, and if you are there and you are listening and you've dealt with this in your life and you've got some adult money that you want to kind of splash around, I'm sure that this organization would totally feed off of some of that. And that's me saying that. It's not these guys asking for it. That's me. So if you're listening, hit them up, you know, or if you can help out in some way, if you're in the San Diego area or wherever, you know, that's just how it works. Welcome to the World Wide Web. We can reach each other 24/7. So that's just me pandering for you guys, okay, to get your dream aloft, because, you know, what do they say? When the tides rise, all ships, you know, rise
All
with
ships
it. So we'll just try to rise that tide.
That's great. Thank you, Rad.
Positive vibes and high tide. Yeah, you're welcome, Mike. Yeah, that's very cool. Now, Mike, you got to tell me what's your background, dude? Where'd you get that beard from?
So I recently retired, actually, or transitioned out of the military from the SEAL teams. I spent 22 years active duty in the teams, and then so getting out. So rehab actually kind of did a paradigm shift for me, because I'm like, there's a huge gap here with the military and their facilities and combating addiction or combating substance abuse. So that was one of the things that Zach and I talked about in the program that we're going through. But getting out, I'm like, man, I just want to, you know, I want to give back, because I had to redefine my purpose once I left the military, or in transition to leaving the military. And so redefining my purpose meant helping others that went through or that are going through or are going to go through a similar situation as me. So that's where, you know, the light bulb went off in my head, and I was like, man, let's do like an addiction facility or a substance abuse facility. I tailor it to addiction, or I like to call it addiction, because it's not just substance abuse and chemicals, right? It's it could be pornography, it could be, you know, overeating, it could be anything. So it could be video games, you know, whatever you're using it, or whatever somebody's using as a coping mechanism. So a coping mechanism becomes that idol, or becomes that substance that they're abusing. And so, like, well, we're like, okay, let's reframe this. Let's reframe. If we're going to use a coping mechanism, then let's go ahead and use a positive coping mechanism. You know, let's learn a skill, or let's eat, you know, properly, or the way that we're designed to eat. Let's heal others in this endeavor of life. And so, you know, that's where, you know, it just started evolving and started morphing into something that it is what it is now, you know, at least on paper. And so, so I'm really looking forward. All said, I'm really looking forward to the next Ridgeline.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was at too. You know, definitely. You know, I've spoke to Mike about this before, and I joke. I was like, God gave me a superpower. He allowed me to drink a lot of amount of alcohol and still remember it all. You know, I wish he would have let me fly or have X-ray vision or something, but that just wasn't in the cards.
Sure.
Going to the hospital and having a 0.45 BAC level. And that was hours after consuming alcohol. The doctor looked at me and he said, you know, you're probably 0.5 over 0.5. You should be dead right now. And I just don't. I remember that whole conversation. I remember my friend Rico, who had to come there to be the representative of my command at the time while I was there. I remember the conversation we had, and I remember how I felt, how desolate I felt, how bad I felt, how just withdrawn I felt. And I think, you know, I was given those abilities and given that ability to remember and really remember how I felt. And it's allowed me to want to give back, because I know I never want to feel that way again. I wouldn't wish those feelings on anybody, not a single person. I can't tell you how I've never felt lower in my life, ever.
Yeah. That's powerful, though.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what's up. I mean, if I sit in a circle with you right now, I just feel like that. Yeah, you know, from smoking cigarettes in my life, you know, I quit those 17 years ago. And I started smoking at a young age, listening to Metallica, like in 7th grade. And I smell a cigarette today, and I still get that reminder of 7th grade Metallica, you know, like listening to One. I'm like, yeah, smoking with Robbie in his basement of his parents' house, you know. And then transition later in life, you know, about 17 years ago, I quit smoking, and I'm 44 today. So I smoked for quite a long time, trying to cut it off here and there, going for like a year off, and then going right back to that scent, that remembrance of Metallica in the basement at Robbie's house. I'm going to smoke again. And I tried it, and I started smoking again. Well, now it's been 17 years since that last cigarette, since that phase. Yesterday, I was talking to a good friend of mine, and he's in his 60s, almost 70s, and he's still smoking, and he's sucking wind. Hey, Rat. Sucking wind. I'm just looking at him like, oh, man. I still smell it. And I'm like, even though he's dying right in front of me sucking that cigarette, I still wanted to hit that cigarette. And I said that. I said, man, you remind me of Metallica in 7th grade. And he held it up to me like, do you want it? And then he pulled it away. I'm just joking. But for a second, he probably would have let me take it and smoked it. So that's enabling me to go right back into my addiction. And there's people out there that will just enable you to say, oh, here, just one little sip. Do you want to remember what this champagne tasted like? Do you want to remember what this looked like? Do you want to remember what this was like? You know, that little, you know, that pushes the domino right over, and everything goes right down the rest of the way. And you're just smoking again, or drinking again, or eating meat if you're a vegetarian and you committed to a vegetarian lifestyle, and it just took, well, what's that like? Oh, and then you go right back to it, whatever the case is.
Well, Rob, I think, or Rad, I think you hit a critical point. Is
Rad.
Like,
yeah, it was Rad. It's okay.
No, I got it. I corrected, self-corrected. So, but I think you hit a critical point in the sense of going back into the addiction or your original addiction. It's significantly less before you go back to the state that you were in, if that makes sense. So, for example, what I'm trying to say is, if I'm like, hey, you know what, I'm going to go back into drinking. Like, it's not going to take me a year or two to get back to the pit that I just came out of. It's going to take me about 3 months, probably.
Right.
So it's significantly reduced. It's like an exponential. It's a bell curve. It's the bell curve effect. And so I'm like, why would I want to go back into that pit? I don't want to go back into the pit, but if I drink, then I will go back into the pit. And it's only going to take me a substantially lower time to get back to the pit. So, okay, so the logic and reason comes in where I'm like, well, I guess I can't drink then, because I got a 3-month window before I'm back into the pit. So no thanks, I'm good.
Right, you're like trying to, like, you know, compartmentalize this. Let me just hit it right now. No. Don't hit it right now. Don't, because you'll have regret. Yeah. And there's no regrets. Okay, you can't have regrets in life. Okay, no regrets, bro. Okay.
Yeah, you're talking about that. You know, I read a quote yesterday. It's Robert Downey Jr. said, "Hey, you ever think about drinking again?" And he goes, "I do." And then I remember I have plans for Christmas. Like, it resonated with me because, like, oh yeah, you know, it's March, but he's right. If I start drinking, I might not have plans for Christmas right now. Like, and I like it. It kind of hit me like, hey. You don't want, I call it a spiral. Like, you know, you go in that hole where you're just spiraling down and down and down. And that spiral is tighter and tighter. And you hit that addiction, and you hit it once, and it comes again, and you start spiraling, that spiral is tighter. So once you drink again, or you go hit that fentanyl, or you do coke, that spiral's tighter now. It's going to go a lot faster down. And I do want to have plans for Christmas, as he said.
I have plans for Easter, dude.
Go ahead.
I was just saying I have plans for Easter. So.
Oh yeah, plans
like
for
right
Easter, exactly.
Corner,
you know, there was an old TV series that when I was growing up, since I named myself being 44, and it was called Little House on the Prairie. There was an episode. We've bought in the whole series, and all my children have watched it now that we're in. You know, they're older. We're older. My wife's like, let's watch Little House on the Prairie. Well, there was an episode, and it just resonated with me. It was a Civil War veteran. He was in Pa and Ma's town. He was going to the doctor and complaining about his injury. And the doctor's like, well, let me give you some of this for your injury. And it was back then, it was the morphine. And then all of a sudden, late at night in the middle of, Pa gets woke up. Hey, Doc's office got broke into. And he knew exactly who broke into that office and what he broke in for, and that was back in the Civil War day. That dude just needed that. He just had to think he needed that because there's phantom pains of not having the meds and then thinking you're still hurt, and you're like, I'm having these phantom pains, and that's real. And if you're listening to this and you're having phantom pains or you're thinking otherwise, just reach out. Just reach out to whoever you can reach out to that you think you can trust, and that person is there for you. Okay, whether it's us three here, these three musketeers on your screen, or you're listening to that are talking about substance abuse and addiction, from our experiences, and we're only human. Like, we're not perfect. We're just trying to do our best to make sure that, we're here to hear your story and hammer it out. Am I wrong on that?
Nope.
No, huh? The heads. That's awesome. Okay, so I think that we've had a really good conversation, and I would like to have you on again, right? And I don't know if my listener has noticed any type of a glitch or here and there. We're trying to make it seamless, but we'll bring you back on again, Zach. If you'll take us back, we'll love to have you. Mike, also, we can do the Three Musketeers, or if there's individual opportunities. But I just want to say thanks again for taking 45 minutes out of your time to an hour of your lives to talk to me and our listener about substance abuse, addiction, being a veteran, and being heard when you need to be heard. Just say something.
Yeah, I would love to be back on, and I'll put up my contact information too on your website. I'll pass it to you where you can. I know Mike will do the same, and no judgment there. You ever reach out to me if you think you have something worse than me, you might be surprised. And I know Mike's the same way, same path, and no matter where you're at and the way you feel. I haven't lived your life, and I can't ever walk the walk you've walked. Those footprints on the beach are already made, but mine are probably pretty close by yours, and I understand where you're at and how you're feeling.
I'm sure they're same way.
Don't ever feel like you can't reach out to me.
Same. I'm on the exact same.
And as say with me too. And I think by saying that, I will conclude our conversation today with Mike Peyton and Zachary Armstrong, both cool dudes that we just met, we just linked up and had this conversation and just went with it. And it's organic. I just want you to know that as you're listening, like, we're just trying to be real and let you know that we have you in mind. So substance abuse sucks. All right. It's true. Hit us up if you have any comments or concerns, questions. Share this podcast with someone who may find interest in our conversation about this subject. And you might want to just say, hey, can you listen to these guys talk about whatever they're talking about? You may just like it. So again, thanks, Mike, and thanks, Zach. And this is Rad saying peace from SOFREP Radio.
Thank you.